For those who have just joined us, we're going to leave it a couple of minutes to give people an opportunity to log on and get onto the system. So please just bear with us for the moment. So there's a couple more minutes to get people, give them time to finish off their lunch. Okay, I think we'll start the webinar now. Firstly, I'd like to say hi to everybody and welcome to today's webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Norman Newell. I'm the sales director at Renaissance, and I'm delighted to have you with us this afternoon. So in this session, we'll explore how ransomware gangs are adapting their tactics, why the traditional defenses are no longer enough, and what organizations can do to stay ahead of the threat. We're joined by Todd Carroll. Todd's a former FBI executive and now SVP of Cyber Operations at CybelAngel. Todd brings a wealth of experience and will be offering some very good exclusive insights into how ransomware gangs are breaching critical systems and what we can, as organizations, do to stay hopefully one step ahead anyway. He'll also discuss the recent Oracle breach, which you may have seen in the press. He's going to share some details on the nature of the attack, how the data was actually exfiltrated, and how zero-day exploits are being traded and used to compromise even the most secure environments. We're all aware of these type of things happening in the world today. So this is a rare opportunity to hear directly from someone who's been on the front lines, so not just somebody who's talking about what they've heard, but somebody who's actually been there and got the T-shirt. So he's been on the front lines of cyber defense, both nationally and globally. So we're very excited about this one. However, before we get started, I just have a few quick housekeeping points. Today's session, it's being recorded. So if you need to hop off early or you'd like to share it with colleagues, we'll make sure to send it after it's all finished. All attendees are currently muted, but if you have a question at any point, feel free to raise your hand or pop it into the Q&A box and we'll make sure we get to it. We really want to encourage the participation. We'll unmute attendees for the Q&A session, so don't hesitate to get involved. The more interactive the session for everybody is going to be better. With that said, I'm delighted to now hand over to Todd to kick things off. Here you go, Todd.
Excellent, Norman. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today to talk about this interesting and obviously ongoing topic, whether it's what's going on with Oracle today or ransomware, as you know, it has been around for actually, unfortunately, decades and will continue, unfortunately, to be around for decades. So that's, like Norman said, we're going to talk about why ransomware matters, some stats that we pulled out from the last years. We'll talk about what they're doing today, and then what are they going to do in the future, and what, obviously, very important for all of us is what can we do at the end of the day, prepare ourselves for these types of attacks, and what do we need to be aware of, and then we'll get into some questions and answers, and then hopefully, like Norman said, let's keep this interactive. If you have questions, definitely please ask them. I'd love to talk about that. So. Obviously, I'm from CybelAngel. Real quick, what do we do at CybelAngel, and how do we fit into when you talk about ransomware? So really just a quick thing about who we are. We're a global company involved in external threat intelligence. What does that really mean? We have the ability we scan for our clients' keywords from the outside in. So meaning that we blindly look at the internet, scanning for keywords of our clients, their domains, their brands, their subsidiaries, company names, VIPs, etc., to look at the external attack surface. So we can bring that back to them so they understand what they look like from the outside and from a hacker's perspective. So you can see some of our clients listed here. We are global. That's all I'll say. We pretty much fit into any sector that you may have. We have small and medium businesses all the way up to the largest enterprises, including probably the two biggest telecoms in the world. So we really fit into any size company, any type of sectors, and able to look at and turn our tools and our scanners onto that to help our clients mainly stay out of ransomware events, hopefully, and also stay out of data breaches. And that's probably the two biggest things that we do. And then we throw threat intelligence on that, and we'll talk about that as we go through with this. But so why does ransomware matter today? Why are the six things that I've put up here that we're going to cover, some in more detail than others? And one thing that I'll show you at the end is from our website, you can get our annual report. Annual report I write every year, looking at the trends that we've seen from an external attack surface, a threat intelligence point of view every year. And these are some statistics that we pulled out because obviously we all as CISOs love statistics, and we love to take that back to our boss and say, see, we got problems. That's why I need more budget, right? And they just turn around and give us money all day long, right? Um, so what are we seeing? Actually, we're seeing ransomware and increasing attacks by 42% last year. More significant probably is the groups are rising. We're seeing new groups coming out of nowhere, 125%. What do we attribute this to? Two different things is one, ransomware is not new. It's been around for decades. And as Norman said, I was with the Bureau for over 20 years, different various roles, mainly national security, cyber, counterintelligence, counterterrorism in my career. This has been around, and I started in cyber with the Bureau probably in 2004, I think was when I took my first squad. Ransomware was in its infancy back then. But it was there. It's just the ability of, hey, if I have something that of yours that you want it back, here you go. The difference is sophistication of the attacks. What are they doing with the data, and where do we think these attacks are going in the future? With the rise of ransomware as a service, I don't need to be that technical anymore in order to launch a ransomware attack. I can go on I can go talk to somebody on Telegram or Discord or wherever it may be, or some dark web forum, and hire them to do it for me or give me the tool set to do it. So you don't necessarily need to be the, hacker extraordinaire in order to launch these. Also, we see as law enforcement, plays whack-a-mole, knocks one group down, they spread out. It's kind of like opening a door and, the roaches run out and you kill one, but the other 10 scatter, and now they become individual groups, and we're seeing stuff like that. So yes, I did compare ransomware attackers with roaches. So what are we also seeing? We're seeing attacks, the cost of them going up significantly. Early in my bureau career, I remember, they would take something and it'd be like the ransom would be like $500. And these are major corporations in the Chicago area, and they would call me and be like, hey, should we pay this? The FBI has always said, don't pay ransomware. And we can get into that if people have questions about that. I can give you my opinion at the end if you really want to know. But at the end of the day, it was like $500. Now they're up to what? The Oracle one is, he wants 20 million. I think he wanted originally, right? He or she, whoever it is, wanted 20 million. So, and why are they going up? Because companies are paying them, because they are not prepared to have these attacks happen, and they don't know how to respond to them. Also, we're seeing threat actors, and we'll talk definitely more. I've got a slide on this. We'll talk about where they're moving from, right? How they're communicating, and why it's important to make sure that you have somebody that's watching that. Right. So larger and smaller players, everybody can get involved in the ransomware game now. Actually, in cyber attacks, there's so much, as a service available out there, whether it's DDoS, ransomware, and other attacks that are out there. You don't need to be, like I said before, the expert in it, because it's available for everybody, right? We used to be really worried about the nation state stuff, okay? In the Bureau being called into a major corporation, and they're, oh my God, what are the Russians, Iranians, North Koreans doing? What's the Chinese doing? If you're worried about that and you're not protecting, basic defenses, that's the last thing you need to worry about. But everybody's involved in the game now, and everybody's trying to look like everybody else when it comes to these attacks. And we'll show you some vectors that everybody's using. We'll definitely talk about this, but AI is fueling phishing attacks. Okay, we were just talking to this as we are getting ready for the webinar about how my company launched, my team launched a phishing attack against our simulated attack last week. It's getting better and better, and especially with AI fueled. And we'll definitely talk more about how this is changing the landscape of phishing attacks. And then, but we have to remember at the end of the day, ransomware and most cyber attacks come down to, the controlling of access, whether it's the data, it's the systems, it's to whatever it is, it's controlling that access. And we kind of sometimes need to step back and think about, where do we need to protect ourselves? What do we need to do in order to make sure that we're not hurt? Okay, my web page gets pulled down or somebody writes something on it. Is that the end of the world if I'm not e-commerce? Versus, okay, I can't have the back end of my client data taken, right? Where do I put my dollar? Okay, that I'm been given by my boss in order to protect ourselves. Do I put it here? Do I put it there? I can't put it everywhere, but I have to be able to take a look at that and understand the risks. So let's get into some access and tools that we are seeing currently. Obviously, we're not covering all of them in this webinar, but this is some food for thought that we want to talk about and what we're currently seeing. So it's the same story, different day. Okay, you see this list, and if there's something here that surprises you, I highly doubt it. Okay, it's the same thing that's been going on. It's phishing, it's more phishing, and then on top of that, some social engineering, exploit kits, brute force attacks, drive-by downloads, right? They're attacking the weakest link in our organizations, right? Which is a human. I used to joke around when I go to, major corporations in the Chicago area and sit down with, their workers and say, okay, the only way you're going to stop phishing attacks is this. Take off everybody's right index finger. Now stop clicking on things, right? Sometimes I got laughs, sometimes I got horrified looks. But at the end of the day, it's the human, right? And that's what we're attacking. We have, AI is at making our machines smarter, but it's still human input. We're asking it to do something. There's human that's still controlling the machines and asking and doing inputs. Okay, it's not, the machine is not smart saying, oh, don't do that. That may be bad. No, we are a human are making it's a machine that's able to do really fantastic things for us. But at the end of the day, it's still being controlled by the weakest link, which is the human. And that's us, right? And we may talk about this all day long, but how do you pass that down to your weakest link, right? To that person that's there going, oh, I don't know. Yeah, sure. I want to see a funny video about a cat, right? Yeah, let me click on that, right? Because they just hose your systems. If you do not have those defenses and think about what impact does that have on your systems, on your data, on their access, whatever it may be. And sometimes it boils down to basic cyber hygiene that's going to stop these things. Because at the end of the day, as an attacker, my most valuable thing is, can I steal someone's credentials and can I use them and develop a presence? Okay. From there, then it depends on the level of attacker. Right, you're dealing with a nation state, they're going to get very sophisticated. Good luck getting them out. They're going to spread like wildfire. They're going to go in and get what they want. They establish a presence. If it's a hacker that just wants to make a buck, they're going to encrypt or they're going to steal data and they're going to put it up for sale, right? So it's kind of what they do is, when we talk about APTs and other things along those lines. But let's talk about a real world example, okay? Which is Oracle. Okay, let's discuss whatever on top of everybody's mind. And we've been working with a lot of our clients in the last, 2+ weeks, 2.5 weeks on this, since about March 21st, when the attacker first put up there, hey, I got 6 million data points. Okay. We've been dealing with it because a lot of our clients want to know, do we hit the panic button or we don't hit the panic button? And everybody I'm sure is very familiar with it. It's on this call or listening to this recording about, the attacker, what's going on. It's still evolving. And Oracle obviously first came out and said, and still publicly to a point is saying they are denying the breach. But if you listen to what Oracle's saying, they're saying it very specifically. Okay. This attacker did not breach this system, right? The cloud, I forgot what the exact wording is, right? But they're being very specific on what they're saying has been breached. Now, one interesting thing that we did was it last week? Right away. It was actually April 1st. We're for one of the first ones to report it. It took about 48 hours for it to get into the news and we were right. Actually, it was from a source of ours that said, hey, Oracle behind the scenes is admitting to this breach. Now, remember also, Oracle has a healthcare breach going on at the same time, completely unrelated. They're having some bad days there. But at the end of the day is now, and I was looking at news last night before I went to bed that's saying, yeah, Oracle is now starting to more publicly, talk to clients about what is being impacted. At the end of the day, attacker got in, and grabbed credentials. Now, some of those are hashed, some of those are they're not able to access. The attackers looked for help in unhashing them, but obviously there's some plain text stuff. They've released at least 3 groups of data. We've looked at those. At first, it was older stuff, some newer things, but at the end of the day, what our clients are telling us and what peers in the industry is saying is that yes, this is real data. Okay, now it may be a Gen 1 legacy systems, but the fact is that there was a breach at Oracle at this point. They are starting to come out and say, yes, this has happened and this is the impact. Why did they not first come out? I think it's a lot of questions that a lot of people are asking right now and scratching their heads, including probably some Oracle people like, why didn't we just tell the truth? We knew what happened. Probably 2 different things. One, I truly believe that the more lawyers that are in the room, the more spin that's going to be put on it. There should be a graph I think I should make because I've experienced that my whole life. Um, uh, that's kind of a joke, but there's some truth behind that. Obviously, they're looking at the long game, right? What did we admit to? Now, that's why I brought up the whole fact is being very specific about what was not breached, which was their current cloud systems.
Mm.
Which they may say, oh, at the end of the day, this is true. So,
C-
um,
Can I? Sorry, Todd. Don't mind me interjecting there.
oh, please.
It's interesting because it's so current and so live, and I suppose for people sitting on this call, um, I for Irish companies who are looking at ransomware and how to protect their defenses in the light of this Oracle breach. What would you say that the things that you would recommend that they should focus on now and over the next while, maybe the next 6 months? And really, I suppose the big one is what's the common mistakes to avoid?
Yeah. So especially with Oracle, listen, if you're an Oracle client, obviously rotation of passwords is critical at this point, and you should have done that. I'm sure you probably did that a long time, or, ago. Um, documenting everything that you're doing and documenting what Oracle's is doing to help you, right? Looking for that outside guidance to whatever. Looking at your agreements, and I was going to cover this a little bit later, but it's a big issue right now is the breach of contracts that are going on, right? And that's where, we get involved in sometimes I know I have to in my role get involved in the contracts that we sign with not only our vendors but with our clients. And we have to make sure we're following those things. I have not seen one contract that says, there's not a data protection clause in it. And you really need to take a look at that and be able to say, okay, what was this a violation and what can I do about it and what we can do to hold accountable. So I think right now is also monitoring, right? Focusing in on those areas, focusing in on those credentials that are, one, can you get your hands on them? Two, what systems do you think? And also, what's even more scarier is talking to your vendors, and especially your critical vendors that are in as part of your, as I call your cyber ecosystem. Are they impacted? Because at the end of the day, you may be protected, and but they're the weakest link, okay? Because they may be a smaller shop that provides something critical. It may be HR, it may be payroll, it could be, healthcare, it could be, IT support, whatever it may be that you outsource, you got to make sure that they're not being impacted by this also. So probably having those conversations with your critical vendors, like, what are you seeing? What do we need to, are you impacted? What are you doing about it? And talking to others, just not internally, but externally, is really important to our organizations right now. And it would be on any type of, to be honest, when it comes to ransomware, is having those open relationships and talking about and monitoring, if possible, what's going on in your ecosystem. So you know, with Oracle, like the only thing I will say is that listen, it's still ongoing. Oracle is now letting their clients know what's going on. To be honest, we found out some information, and then there's some links to some flash reporting that we've done in involving this. But part of what we found was that Oracle was actually aware of this probably as early as January, and was working behind the scenes to lock this actor out, meaning take the actor, yes, has probably has more likely than not has 6 million different credentials. The end of the day is so what, right? So when they came out, they were aware of it. Did they protect their systems and hopefully protect their clients as much as they possibly could before this happened? Now, the communication thing, we could debate all day why they did this, why they didn't. If they're working with law enforcement, actually in the US, you can delay notification of victims if you're working with law enforcement. And I know I heard the FBI is involved. I heard, obviously CrowdStrike has been brought in to do this, but it also shows you the impact of if you're not monitoring your systems and all your systems, even your legacy systems that are out there, right? Everything is out there. And I believe me, in my career, I don't know how many times I walked into any type of company um, with an agent of mine and with a piece of paper saying, "Hey, is this your server?" They're like, "Oh, that's our old mail server." Well, it's still online and the Chinese own it, and they're jumping through it to attack other companies. "Hey, would you sign this piece of paper and allow us to monitor what the Chinese are doing?" And they're like, like I said, once again, more lawyers in a room, less chance, less lawyers, and like, hey, maybe we should do this because it's the right thing to do for national security, so we can see what they're doing, right? And we could track what they were doing. And that was the earlier parts of what I consider, Chinese advanced, persistent threats and Byzantine whatever back in the day. And but it's still what's going on today. It's people are jumping through and using other technology in order to attack and extract and I wouldn't say play games with reporting, but obviously, if I was an Oracle customer right now, I would have a lot of questions and be wondering and probably getting a lot of pressure from my board or my C-suite about what do we do? What are we doing about it? And do I need to hit the panic button? And probably the biggest thing you can do right now is monitoring those systems, monitoring your access, rolling your passwords, probably not only once, but twice. Um, and then, and then talking to your peers at this point. So.
Thanks, Todd.
So let's get into phishing. Obviously, it's a huge thing. What we've seen on our ends, we watch domains for our clients and the lookalike domains and things that are parked around that. We also do the takedowns for our clients. What we've seen actually is the amount of takedowns that are being requested by us is going up because a lot of the domains that we're reporting back are actually, the beginning of phishing attacks, right? You need a domain in order to do things. And we try to get that, as I said, as far up the attack chain as possible in order to prevent these things from happening instead of reacting to these issues, right? And we talked about this, or I mentioned it, AI is fueling phishing attacks. The ability to look at an email anymore just off your, and look at that's not proper English, the space, it's written poorly. Yeah, that's phishing, right? It's obvious. No, they're using AI, they're using obviously, deep fakes and everything else and sophistication against trying to gain that access. And it's easy to do. We did, like I said, we launched one last week against some of our employees. It took us less than 30 minutes to create. And it wasn't that it was sophisticated. There was markers in it that they hopefully were going to see. We tugged on some heartstrings. We did something about a summer get together, a thing coming from HR, like, let's do something nice together. But everybody's being targeted right now. And if you're not, and your company has not been targeted, especially with DocuSigns, we get hit at least once a day to the executive level or at least to our finance team on fake DocuSigns. And they're pretty good. We got hit one yesterday. The reasons we didn't pick up on it is one is some of them can't figure out the spacing. It looks good up front, but the bottom of the email does not look right. And if anything doesn't look right, stop and you got to ask yourself, what is going on here? But they're using AI to create these things. Some of the spacing, we also noticed some of the words spacing was missing. So they're not correcting. They're not doing, which is, but they will. They will figure this out. And another thing that hit us yesterday was the topic was something about us purchasing crypto, and we don't purchase crypto. So it was like, well, wait a second. This is phishing. but it's getting more sophisticated. And that's, once again, it's not about us. It's not about us that are supposed to be doing this as professionals. It's about how do we help that weakest link in our team, the person that's not paying attention, that's clicking, oh, that seems like important. Let me click on that. Or, ooh, that sounds great. How do we defend against that? And, obviously, training's never going to go away. Um, the awareness campaigns, but the vendors need to get more sophisticated in the way that we're able to detect this and able to also use AI, not only from, an attacker's point of view, but from a defender's point of view. How can we leverage AI, or how can our vendors that are helping us with these, help us turn the tables against, so they don't even end up, or they're flagged earlier on because of these indicators. I'm going to use the word challenge your vendors quite a bit in the next probably 15 minutes. And you should be. You should always challenge your vendors. And I'm a vendor, believe me. I want to be challenged. Hey, what are you guys doing about this threat? What are you going to do for this? And how are you going to react to this? Because if your vendor's not in this with you, why are you paying them X amount of money to do this? Because they need to be thinking about not only today, but what's going to happen here in the near future. And this is a really big area. And AI is really changing this. We're seeing it become more and more sophisticated. We're becoming, and it's easy to do. I'm sure most of us have messed around with, whatever AI that you want to use, or and it's pretty, powerful what you can do and you can't do. Imagine in the hands of the bad guys. Um, so two really quick examples on this that we just recently had, one with a pharma, one with an insurance company. Both of them look-alike domains, somebody parked nearby. Initial reporting back to them was, hey, here you got somebody that's dropping in their watch list. I think one had an MX server attached to it. The other one was just whatever, right? We decided to look further in that, use other tools in our tool stack, do some data correlation, looked at some threat intelligence, and realized both of them actually had connections to malware groups, right? You got to be able to have a vendor that's able to willing to go down and have the tools to be able to go down that rabbit hole and determine, okay, is there any type of different things? And one had two different malware families associated with, and 100 plus bad domains associated. The other one was um, had characteristics of a command and control server, right? A CT server doing communications involving some other malware. So definitely took that report from just hey, you have a look-alike to, hey, this is really bad. Let's get rid of this as soon as possible. But also a lot of ammunition for us to take back to go to the registrar and say, hey, this is fraudulent. This is why. There's no argument about this. You got to take it down. Because all of us, I'm sure, have been in that area where we've contacted the GoDaddies of the world and said, hey, I don't like this domain. It's too close to mine. Please take it down. And they're like, yeah, no, right? Until there's something that you got to be able to prove that's going on with that domain. So part of that is this. But it's becoming more sophisticated, and I think this is something that is actually fueling ransomware. It's fueling access. It's fueling attacks, and it's something that we really need to be aware of. So criminal forums, this is interesting. So in last year, what we noticed something very interesting was that we're sending more and more incidents away from Tor. And what I say by criminal forums is, so we have a module called Dark Web. To be honest, it shouldn't be called dark web. It should be called criminal forums, because you got to be where the bad guys are talking, and where they're talking about, whether it's attacks, data for sale, whatever it may be. Hey, I'm going to post on breach forum. All of them have some type of presence. And Telegram, we're seeing more and more incidents where we're talking about and notifying mentions of their company in borderline, if not criminal means, is up almost 70%. Discord up over 50%. We're seeing Tor actually dropping because, the bad guys they seem empowered with this. If we think about the Telegram case from last year, we are a French company. Okay. I'm in the US, but we are a French company. The French arrested the CEO and founder of Telegram. Okay. And first thing we all saw was all the bad guys on Telegram, not all of them, but most of them were like, hey, we're out of here. This is going to be bad. Guess what? No one's left. Okay. Because why? Where are they going to go that Telegram's not going to really, Telegram said, oh, hey, we're going to tell the law enforcement who you are. I'm going to tell you right now, being prior law enforcement for over 28 years, law enforcement will not work at the speed that we need as an industry. Okay. If we're relying on law enforcement to be our defense against attackers, they're trying, but there's a lot of laws and rules that are out there. And if we're relying on them in order to do this, it's a game of whack-a-mole, right? They knock one down, 10 more pop up. Okay. Effectiveness is not going to happen in our lifetime when it comes to this as something is going to be a impactful defender against us. Yes, they're bringing people to justice. I applaud them. I know a lot of people are still in the industry and still, fighting a good fight. But at the end of the day, we can't rely on this. Okay. What's going on with Telegram and the CEO and whatever deal the French government's coming up with, I don't know. I have my theories coming from an intelligence background, but at the end of the day, the bad guys are still there, and they don't seem to be bothered by talking about whatever it may be involving there. So, really, the impact on the arrest is nothing, because that's where the actors are still playing. So I mentioned Tor. We're actually seeing less Tor, accessible, where we're sending less alerts out about those because it takes a little extra room, or extra work to do that. And the bad guys want to be there where they can talk to each other. If I've got something and I want to throw it up for sale, at the end of the day, it may happen, in the dark web, but really the initial part may happen someplace else. It's just like any type of other social media, right? Your kids are out there. They want to be found. If they got a fake account, just follow their friends and you'll figure out what your kids, fake account is. They say, you just tell parents all the time, right? And that's still the way to do it, right? They're using mainstream social media in order to connect now. We're seeing them all over X. We see them on, like I said, on Telegram. I don't think they're in LinkedIn yet. Hopefully not, as us as professionals. That seems where we live. Facebook, and as the hackers get older, maybe they'll move over there. But and we also see, listen, it's important to pivot to where they're at, right? And have a threat intelligence partner that is actually looking at that. If you believe that dark web is a complete picture when it comes to threat intelligence, that's not, because everything we do and everything that you're getting is a part of threat intelligence, and putting that together with other pieces that is adding to that big defense that you're looking at. So, um, you know, like I said, once again, same thing. Challenge your vendors. Are they where the bad guys are? Right? Are they pivoting? What are they watching? What different sites are they on? Which ones are they? Are they using a combination of humans and technology in order to scrape and to capture and to find out? And then also, are they getting into speed where they're putting in your hands? Right? Reporting on something that happened a week ago is not at speed. Right? The speed of cyber is we're talking, minutes, if not an hour, when it comes to something physical, is a long time. And we have to be able to adjust and adapt to those things. So probably one of the other areas that I think is really important as we look at what do we do in the future is third parties, supply chain attacks. We are seeing these going through the roof, unfortunately. And once again, it has to do with the weakest link. Everybody's interconnected. Think about your ecosystem. Think about, how you rely on outside vendors. Think about the information that's being shared from other business units, whether it's lawyers or HR or, where your data is stored. And, what do you rely on your company in order to do what you do, whether it's manufacturing or transportation or whatever it is. We are no longer closed systems. We haven't been for a very long time. We rely on others all the time, right? We all fill out the check boxes, right? We all get oh, hey, I'm going to sign a vendor. Hey, could you look at their cybersecurity? I want to sign this by the end of the day, right? We get those all the time. Everybody does, right? And we go through and we look at their compliance checklist. Okay, well, they have answered this, and they say yes, 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 yes. Okay, trust but verify. It's the old adage, right? Okay, can I trust them as a vendor? Yes, they signed a contract. Oh, wait a second, there's that data privacy clause in there. But at the end of the day, is enforceable. And do I know if something happens, and what is my impact if this happens, right? Are we watching our critical vendors? Obviously, there's third-party rating systems that are out there, like, oh, they have a 89. What does that mean, right? I don't know what an 89 versus a 99 versus a 49 is. Um, are those, enough to check the box of compliance? Are you sleeping well with that? Or are you have somebody that is actually able to take a look at it? Do you have a proactive and a robust third party, monitoring system? Okay. We're seeing a lot of attacks coming from here. Listen, it's not necessarily also access into your systems and taking advantage of their vulnerabilities, but it's also understanding and mapping, okay, how does one of my assets connect with other assets that maybe have vulnerabilities? At the end of the day, I may not own that asset, but their lack of cybersecurity or addressing that vulnerability may have an impact on my systems. Understanding what you look like from, like I said, once again, the outside in. So, prime example here, I can't tell you the names. I can talk around it, but an Italian-based technical consulting company at the end of last year, they had a ransomware attack. Okay, and the actors back, Black Bassa, published a file tree, and poof, our client, who's involved in global transportation sector in Europe, was on that. Well, when we contacted that company, our client, and said, "Hey, you're mentioned in this attack. What is, the Italian company doing for you?" And they went, "What are you talking about?" Okay. So are you relying on that third party, that critical third party, to say, is that in the contract? Do you have a clause or an amendment to it that says, hey, if you have this happen, you have to notify us in X amount of time? So we opened up a can of worms by telling our client, you're listed, some of your files are listed in this file tree being released, because obviously this is what the ransomware attackers do. They basically do a countdown on their site, right? They say, hey, we have X, Y, and Z. You have X amount of days to pay us. And then they literally, it's a countdown timer by days, boom, 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 boom. And they may release, they'll put some extra pressure. And will they release at the end of the day? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They'll put it up for sale. Sometimes they'll just freely release it, whatever it is, but they're trying to publicly shame you as much as possible to paying the ransom up front. And this is one of the tactics they use, and this is what they were doing when we were happened to find it. So obviously our client was pretty upset at one of their companies. They forced us on to do some monitoring onto that consulting company based on the data protection clause inside the master service agreement. But it's something that, we see this more and more often. Okay. Ransomware, we do a ransomware list every week. It's live on our platform if you're a customer, and you can see all the different attacks going on. And we have all the time, hey, that's a vendor of ours. Hey, what about that? What's going on with that one? But the list is growing and growing, and obviously, and will continue. And that's coming from, unfortunately, our supply chain.
So that's interesting, because there's a a question in the window there. It says, can you recommend any sites or mail lists that can alert you to make you aware of cyber attacks like the Oracle one? And what you're saying is you have that list.
Okay.
And is
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm a vendor. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes. Are we one of the answers?
yeah.
Yes. Where this is something we provide. There's other vendors out there that do that in the external attack surface or the threat intelligence model. But or I'm sorry, line of protection. So we're not the only
Mm,
ones that are out there doing this. But part of it is, I would encourage you to, do an RFI, do a trial, see what type of data it is versus others. Obviously,
mm,
we all, send something different. What fits for you and your use cases? What do you want to know, and what do you want to know at the speed of? And that's really important, I think, also working the vendor. It's just not, do we have the information, but how quickly are we going to put it in your hands? How are we putting your hands? Does it, does the list, can it be pulled into your, systems where, you're tracking all of yours? We have clients come to us and say, okay, I have 4,000 vendors. Can you tell
mm.
us if that happens? And then we also have other ones. Yeah, we have 4,000 vendors. I'm not telling you who they are. Can you automate this? Can this list be automated and dragged through whatever ticketing system or, Splunk or whatever it may be, XOR or whatever, so that we can compare it up against that, right? And we can do it both in different ways. And I think that's really important, because that's probably one of the ways in order to do that. The other way is to have a monitoring company that takes a look and the ability to look at if your data is out there in the wild and being mentioned and unprotected. So once again, if you can't have access to the data, It's hard to encrypt it. It's hard to attack it. And it's, you know, cybersecurity is, I always use the example of like going into your neighborhood at night at 3 in the morning, right? You walk, if you ever come home at 3 in the morning and you looked at your neighborhood, most of you probably don't think like this, but coming from law enforcement, I think like this, like, which house could I break into without anybody noticing, right? Who doesn't have lights on? Who looks like they're on vacation because the mailbox is overstuffed. There's no lights on. The trees are overgrowing the windows. Well, I could stand behind that window and work on that window all night long and nobody's going to know. Who doesn't have the sticker on the front window? Who doesn't have cameras? The sticker that says, oh, protected by. Whether you have a system
Mm.
or not, get a sticker that says protected by whatever. It's a
Mm.
deterrent, right? Because I'm going to look at your neighbor's house and go, well, that's a lot easier. It's the same thing with cybersecurity. If your cyber defenses are better than others, they're going to move to the weakest link. Okay. It's the same thing when it comes to this, right? It's my defense is up enough where the attacker is going to go, I cannot do this. I can't get in this. They're multi-factor roles. They're doing this well. They're doing that well. You know what? Not worth it. I'm just going to go over here and attack somebody else because believe me, it is shooting fish in a barrel, especially when it comes to these types of attacks, unfortunately. Okay. Okay. So what are we going to do about this defense as we get into the last part here? So what do we expect to see in 2025? If I looked into crystal ball, okay, listen, we just talked about supply chain. It's not going to get better, people. It's going to get worse. We have to have the ability to um, know what they're doing and be able to enforce it. But obviously, this comes at a huge cost. If you have thousands of vendors, even hundreds of vendors, how are you going to pay for this, right? You got to be able to, you can't put all your money in monitoring somebody else. What you can do is make sure that you're doing something that gives you awareness. What are these doing? And then how do I focus in on my critical vendors? How do I look at risk assessments and how do I look at, who has got my keys to my kingdom, right? Is it a cloud provider? Is it, okay, wait a second, all of our client data flows through our CRM, which is here, or are we paying for, the ones with good defenses, or are we paying for, the one we had a coupon for, right? It's what are we paying for and what results are we expecting to get? Two, AI is continuing to be a hot topic. Obviously, we talked about this. It's going to continue not only in the attacking, we need to be using it more in the defense side. And I know that's something we're always challenged on with as vendors. What's our use of AI? But I always look at it from two different ways as a vendor. One, are we using AI responsible? Two, are we doing it and also protecting our client data? Because that's crucial to us. And, what can we do in order to speed up and enhance the ability to correlate data across our systems? So I think that's going to significantly improve here as we get across 25 and into 26. And that's an area that definitely we need to look at. And obviously also listen, geopolitical tensions are continuing to rise. Whether it's on the physical side, we've seen what happened between Ukraine and Russia, with the Israelis and the response from not only, you know, um, social groups, right? Hey, we don't like what they're doing, so we're going to do this. But also the nation states that are behind those, fueling those different areas and pushing those things. But now we have different things going on that we need to also keep in mind. Elections, okay? They're all differently charged. I mean, look what's going on in the United States right now. We're not going to, dive into this, but obviously all of our markets are going right? And we're all from a point of view going, what is going on and when's this going to end? And where at the end of the day, what's going to happen? Those are all fueling different types of cyber threats and cyber attacks.
Mm.
We get caught up in it maybe just because of who we are or what sector we're in or perception or something that our CEO said or something that someone that used to be attached to us said. And now all of a sudden we become a target of whatever it may be. So this will continue. It's not going to get better. Unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse when it comes to these geopolitical tensions. But don't just think about physical. Think about all the other things that are going on in the world, the markets, elections, social strife, you name it. It's going to continue, and it's also going to fuel these cyber threats. And we, as companies and enterprises, are going to get caught in the middle of these. So, what can we do to stay ahead of these things? Okay. Understanding, I think, really important. One thing I learned early on is understanding risk appetite. What is the risk appetite of the board and the C-suite? What are they willing to take on, and what willing are they not to? And also, do they understand what that means? If we don't protect this, we have a risk there. And being open and honest about, listen, this isn't adequate. We have this tool, it's not adequate. This is what it's going to take to fix it, and this is what I would like to do, right? Does it protect your job at the end of the day? Probably not, but you know what? You need to be open and honest about what it is, what their risk appetite is, and sometimes pointing out maybe the thing that would be obvious to us as defenders, or as in charge of security, but won't be necessarily obvious from their point of view in their seat. Okay, so education of your C-suite and board, if possible. Sometimes they don't let us in the doors. Sometimes they welcome us in the doors. But having the ability to talk about risk, what's going on in the markets, what we're doing about it, and being proactive is actually very important. Do you have a ransomware plan from the top down, right? Are those groups involved in what would happen if this happened? And are you actually, testing and doing tabletops, right? You need to, whether it's ransomware or it's other scenarios like, okay, our cloud provider went down. What do we do? Okay. And working through those scenarios and making sure the right people are in the room, especially the people who are going to have to make those decisions. And it starts from us, from our plans. We give them out, we update them every year and say, you read this, right? And they're, oh, yeah, yeah, I read this, right? And we do a tabletop and they're like, where's this at? All right. You get through those things ahead of time because it's very important. Most of us need these anyways for compliance reasons, but it's got to be more than that. It's got to be something that's, what do we do when the buzzer goes, when what hits the fan, and how do we react to it? And having that tested is also incredibly important. I talked about good cyber hygiene. Okay. The small things sometimes blocks the big things. Okay. Right. Listen, Oracle, I can't imagine what they're paying CrowdStrike right now to come in and go, huh, you probably had that server offline. At the end of the day, really, what is protect your legacy servers? Be aware of what's in your inventory. Wow, that sounds like really basic stuff, right? I'm sure CrowdStrike is getting, I can't imagine the bill that's coming in, right, from that. We can do small things right now, right? You want to pay a penny now to a vendor who's going to help you understand your cyber ecosystem, or do you want to pay, dollars, euros on top of that penny to have somebody company goes in and goes, yeah, probably should have done that 5 years ago,
Mhm.
right? Oh, I know, by the way, here's some professional services we can do to on top of that. So, that maybe $100,000, once a year thing, or not once a year, but a yearly thing now has cost you $10 million to have one of the big boys come in and say, okay. And in the meantime, you're probably looking for a new job. Okay. So really at the end of the day, and it's really hard to do that, say, well, we're here to protect you from the unknown, that is going to happen, but no one wants to be in that position. Okay. And no one really does. I don't want to be, I don't think anybody wants to be, but at the end of the day, you know, understanding what's important, having awareness of your enterprise, your cyber ecosystem, being part of that third party risk, because at the end of the day, they're going to be looking at you and going, why weren't you involved in this? How did you not know? Right? Well, wait, that's not my business. Well, you're the chief information security officer. Why weren't you part of this? Right? So now waiting back and have somebody invite you into the room or invite you into whatever, it's being proactive and understanding what is your systems, what is your business units doing, what role do you fit into this, and really helping protect the enterprise as a whole. And once again, I'll say it again, challenge your vendors, right? If they're not doing what you're doing or not saying the right things, and it's all it is about is, oh, here's your 3% increase for the year. You're like, okay, what are you doing for me for that 3%? Okay, what's the roadmap? What are you doing? I need this. I need that. Are you going to put this in? This is what I need to look at in the future. It's really important. Just really quick before we get to question and answer, how do we do it? Obviously, we do it through detection of exposed assets and data. We also have a human involved with it, which means someone to go back and forth with. I put the analyst on my side, not on our client side. so that all the reports that we give are actionable and have um, attribution to each one of the alerts that we send out so people can understand. But I think what's really important is that having awareness of your external attack surface, couple that with threat intelligence, gives you the ability to control your cyber risk and understand, okay, what do I look like from the outside and how can I be, whether it's I can challenge the C-suite or I can give a better understanding of and communicate. This is what we look like. This is the areas that we're weak in. Or by the way, HR, what are you doing? Thanks for telling me about this system that you connected that actually is exposing, all of our employees, PII. That happens all the time, but that's part of being awareness or just waiting till somebody is attacked or law enforcement calls you going, oh, by the way, your information's up for sale on the dark web. That's not the call we all want. What we wanted to be able to do and what we do for our clients is keep them out of the papers and keep them aware and being proactive to stop their exposures, let's put it that way, versus reacting to something that bad has happened. So we have resources all over our website. Please visit CybelAngel.com. These are in our blog. Look at that, whether it's the threat report from last year or some things that we've done recently on the Oracle data breach or, different ransomware groups. We welcome to visit that. And if you're interested, just hit us up. So I guess it's question and answer time, Norman.
Yep. And I think we're going to throw it out and open up people's microphones if anybody wants to raise their hand and any questions out there. I think one of the things before we do that as well, you did mention paying the ransomware, whether or not people should pay it. I was at a conference only 3 days ago, actually, and there was a cyber insurance guy there. He was in the incident response team, and it was interesting to me anyway, maybe not to you, but he was quite happy to pay the ransom if it made sense. And he said, and he talked about honorable ransomware gangs and things like that. And I'm going, well,
Okay, so what is that? There's no honor among thieves.
yeah.
Nothing changed. I mean, listen, they're criminals. I'm not going to listen unless I am completely unprepared for and I have no other alternatives but to pay the ransomware because I need that data and that is critical. Then it has to be a decision that's made across the board, right? And then the ability to look back and go, okay, why did we do that? Why weren't we prepared? Coming from the government, we're like, oh, we'll, never pay, the ransom. Listen, it's going to come down to individual companies and their decision points based on what their posture is, okay? And also what is taken. Don't do it blindly. There's companies out there that will help negotiate with these ransomware actors, but I have zero trust in anybody that steals for a living. I'm sorry. It's going to evolve. I mean, listen, and we don't think that they're not keeping a copy of it themselves and they're releasing other parts and selling it, and it's going to pop up someplace else, or potentially they're going to try to, double extort or sell it. The thing that's scary to me that I think is going to happen here, maybe not this year, or I would say probably in the next 3 years, is when this starts to run its course a little bit, they'll evolve, right? And they'll start destroying, right? Could you imagine if I can access data, that means I can alter it maybe, or I can do something else to it. And that's where, things can get really interesting as, you know, we all, what's the basic, the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, you know, that's all part of this. And you got to think about it. You lose control of part of that. What could you do with that, right? What access do they have? And that's why, no, listen, and don't get me started on cyber insurance. It's a necessary evil, I guess. We all have to have it to a point. Look what they're covering now versus the original, right? The original, I call the original breach back in the day of Target, right?
Mm.
It wasn't a ransomware. It was they just stole data because Target was too lazy to do multiple networks or parse, and their conditioning was attached to their point of sales terminals, right? boy, Target spun that great. Oh, we're going to do chips. Well, Europe's been doing chips for years before. It's just they didn't, and nobody enforced it, right? But the amount of insurance that was paid out on that one was incredible. You couldn't touch a fraction of that. In fact, good luck in getting the insurance companies to pay because the rules now, every time there's a breach, right? What they'll pay for is getting narrower and narrower and narrower, right?
Mm,
So good luck with that. If you're relying, if that's something that your board and your C-suite is relying on as a, you know, to help reduce your risk, right? They're putting it off and saying, well, we pay for insurance. So don't worry about that, Todd. You know, we got this covered. Insurance will take care of it.
mm,
You better get that resume for dummies book and start because bad things are going to happen, and it's not going to be covered. And so, insurance, believe me, it's getting worse and more costly for us all, and they're paying out on less and less. So I'm sure he's happy because it just drives up their premiums and puts money in the company's pockets. But that's for another webinar. So.
absolutely. Um, no, thanks on that. There's actually quite a few questions come in there. I'm not sure we'll be able to get to them all, but we'll certainly will answer them. Um, one of them was this, do you work with any partners that specialize in mass encryption prevention or ransomware blocking tools?
Ooh. Um, Mass encryption prevention and ransomware blocking tools. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't think so. That's definitely a newer area. Um,
We can come back on that
but
anyway.
again, I think,
Yeah,
once again, it's if you have a vendor that you think falls into that, once again, that's a great question to ask all your vendors,
Could it
right?
be like something
yeah,
like Bullwall or something? Is that
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, we have a solution that does that, as Larry's pointed out there. Um, so yeah, no, I mean, and we'll discuss that a little bit further. There's another one. It's this person saying, I'm particularly concerned that cyber attacks are beginning to target the renewable energy sector and are causing physical damage, loss of revenue to wind, solar, BESS. None of this will typically be insured.
Right.
We need boards of directors to take action to understand how vulnerable our assets are, as well as how attacks on their supply chain could hurt them, which is absolutely true. They also need to understand how cyber regulations are going to be expecting directors to take action to manage and mitigate the risk. I'm not sure if that's a question, but it certainly, moves into the NIS type
Mhm.
sector and things like that. So I don't know if you want to say something to that,
Yeah.
Todd.
So obviously, you got to understand why regulatories are put out there, right? Why the regulatory authorities are, we have several updated this year going into 25, and we have several that are new, and understanding those and the impact on your industry and you as an organization and what you need to do in order to, one, obviously check those boxes. Listen, and compliance is sometimes it helps you get to your means to your end. It's not the end all. If your company is looking at just and we see this really heavily, especially in the financial sectors in the US, if it ain't due to compliance or SEC regulations, they just, okay, everything else is just whatever, to be honest. And it's really disturbing because at the end of the day, it's got to be more than just compliance. And if we're expecting regulatory organizations tell us what to do and do it right, once again, it's back to law enforcement, right? I do not rely on the U.S. Congress or the SEC in order to tell me what to do that's proper and can work at the speed that needs to be done. We can't, these areas are very difficult, but obviously understanding those and the reasons behind and what your organizations need to do. One, so you have to pay additional fines and other things because also may prevent you from doing work in certain sectors. But back to the question about, I think this goes down to, education of board of directors, right? And how do you get the ability to do that and them to understand the assets and the actual protections that are out there and what's really going on. Like I said, us as defenders and then those who are in the industry understand that, legacy systems and, God, if anybody's on here in healthcare, God bless you. But you guys have such a challenge with regulated systems and devices that can't be updated or whatever, and the challenge of attackers taking advantage of those vulnerabilities, right? Once again, it goes back to, I think, challenging your vendors and also your medical suppliers, right? What are you doing about this? What are you going to do to ensure that your device 3 years from now is not a point of attack, right? What are you doing to update this? What are you doing to make sure that your systems are vulnerable or updated? And you're right, a lot of this renewable energy and physical damage can absolutely happen, right? And the attackers are going to be more sophisticated. And as people get, once again, geopolitical, they get more ticked off at companies or countries, you may end up being, collateral damage in this fight because someone's going to say, "Oh, you got a grant from XYZ country because you're let's say Canadian and you're doing this project and we're mad at the Canadians now and somebody's going to do something that's, it's going to cause, more physical damage than, that's out there. And I wouldn't say we're making it easy, but the amount of vulnerable systems that we see out there that are just not patched or just left and walked away from by a third party is crazy. And we report on those every day to our clients.
Perfect. I think we'll just take one more. And it says, how does CybelAngel differentiate from other threat vendors in identifying exposed data and anticipating the obvious threats?
I think where we are is one is that we can do it pretty cleanly. Most of what I mean by that is that we do put differentiators in, like we're looking at blindly a keyword, right? Whether it's company name and bringing that back. It's also going at depth, meaning that we're bringing the document back to you and say, hey, here's what the document looks like. And we've had a human review it, not just a machine. So I think it's also depth and it's at speed, right? We're running our scanners 24/7. We're getting this back before the attackers. We're seeing literally, someone plug in a backup server or a backup drive. Hey, here's a Western Digital that somebody did. Well, who is this person? Well, they used to work for your company 3 years ago, and somehow they have this data involving your company, and there's confidential all over it. So I think it's really the depth of it's depth, speed, and also having a human on the other side, on my side, to be able to say, you go back and say, wait a second, is this open? Is this further? Can we tweak our keywords in order to make sure we look at this data set? It's a back and forth, and it's not just a big search engine of, okay, I wonder what's out there, and let's go take a look. Because you don't have time to do that. We're all under hiring constraints, talent constraints, whatever it may be. And I think that's one of the differentiators we have. But, like I said before, if you're interested, talk to us. We'll show you what we got.
Yep.
And you make up your own mind and see if it fits your use cases.
Lovely. Todd, I think that's a great place to end and very much appreciate your input on this. I found it really interesting, to be honest with you, and hopefully everybody else did. We'd like to thank you all for attending today. And as Todd says, contact us, any more information, book a meeting. Happy to assist in any way we can. So thank you to everybody.